Eating that, man. Oh my God, I don't like that color. My bad, y'all. What is up? What is up, YouTube? How y'all doing? Yeah, check it out. Sidebar, P. Diddy, former bad boy colleague, spills studio secrets. Little by little, it's coming out, man. It's coming out too slow. It's coming out too slow for Uncle Mike, man. Y'all better hurry up and let's get this thing going. Jump out there, let us know what's going on, man. Diddy is you know, one thing I found out, man. Diddy said his knee was hurting. He went to the hospital and insisted on going to the hospital. They said he just wanted to see the Grammys. He wanted to see, he wanted to watch TV, man. So he made that whole thing up just so he could see what's happening. And I'm saying to myself, why you want to see what's happening? Because you ain't never gonna be out there doing that stuff no more. Them times is done with you, bruh. Don't nobody in the industry want to work with you. Anyway, y'all hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. Shout out to everybody who missed the echo like me. Hey, y'all hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. Let's check it out. Here we go, y'all.
𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 is facing new allegations of coercion, intimidation, and all-around bad behavior in a new podcast from the BBC. We're taking a deep dive with one of the journalists to address these latest reports. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. I have so much money now that I could hire someone to kill you and nobody would know. No one would miss you. No one would know anything. Those are the words that Sean Diddy Combs allegedly said to a colleague back in the 90s, leaving those working very closely with him pretty shaken. So the BBC spoke with more than 20 people about the allegations that have been leveled against the disgraced music mogul. That includes Daniel Evans, who we're going to be talking about, a former senior executive at Bad Boy Records. The BBC World Service has a new podcast that is called Diddy on Trial that explores Combs' current legal predicaments as well as how we got here. And of course, right now, Sean Combs, currently in the Metropolitan Detention Center, the MDC out in Brooklyn, New York, locked up without bail as he awaits a federal trial currently scheduled for May. Prosecutors have charged Combs pursuant to a grand jury indictment with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. And some of the allegations made against Combs by former staff and colleagues to the BBC, they actually coincide with what the government has been saying or alleging that Combs has been up to for years, for decades. A recently filed superseding indictment actually extended the period the prosecution was looking at for criminal conduct from 2008 now to 2004. Now, something to note. Combs has always denied that he ever committed any sort of sex crime. He is reportedly ready to fight to clear his name. In response to the BBC's reporting, his legal team wrote, "As we've said before, Mr. Combs cannot dignify every publicity stunt or facially absurd claim with a response. He has full confidence in the judicial process where the truth will prevail. These accusations are pure fiction." So what are some of those accusations? Well, we have to go back to Combs' early days in the music business. Hey, quick sidebar from Sidebar for a minute to tell you guys about this. You know Morgan & Morgan is our incredible sponsor and partner. Well, they're also the official law firm partner of the UFC, and it makes total sense, right? Because fighting is in their DNA, like UFC fighters who bring their everything into the octagon. Morgan & Morgan's 1,000 attorneys bring their everything for their clients in courtrooms across America. But get this, right now, Morgan & Morgan is giving away 2 tickets to the Pereira vs. 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 fight in Las Vegas, plus $2,000. Yep, you can enter for your chance to win at www.morganufc.com or click the link in the description and pinned in the comments. All right, so to talk about this, I want to bring back onto Sidebar 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦. She's been on the show before talking about, I think the last time was the sex trafficking allegations involving the Abercrombie & Fitch, or former Abercrombie & Fitch CEO. But now we have her again, reporter for the BBC, who has been part of this Diddy on Trial podcast, has been following this saga extensively. 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦, it's so good to see you again. Thanks for coming back here on Sidebar.
Thanks for having me back on.
So talk to us about how you got involved in the podcast and what you have been learning through your investigation.
Sure. So I think we all saw those headlines back in November 2023 of Cassie Ventura filing her lawsuit against P. Diddy. That's what got all of this steamrolling. And I've been following the case since then. And obviously we've seen in recent months, there have been so many lawsuits against Diddy accusing him of drugging and assault, more than 40 of those. And a lot of them do date back to the 90s. So I've been looking into that area of his career in particular, trying to find out more about the makings of P. Diddy, or Puff Daddy, as he was known back then, and trying to find out from people who used to work with him and people in his inner circle, were there potentially early warning signs about some of the allegations that we're seeing now? And as I mentioned, some of these allegations of drugging and assault do go right back to the start of his career in the 1990s.
And my understanding is, so if you go where he launched Bad Boy, he was, rising star. There's a name that's come up, Daniel Evans. Who is he and what is his connection to this?
Right, so Daniel Evans is one of the original employees of Bad Boy Records. Bad Boy Records being Sean Combs' Grammy Award-winning music label that he started in 1993. It had top artists like the Notorious B.I.G. and Craig Mack. And Daniel Evans at the time was in a finance role with the company, so he managed Bad Boy's recording budgets. He was one of 20 people who I spoke with who knew about Sean Combs back then. And he told me some really striking things. He told me that there was a bit of a hookup culture at the company where it wasn't uncommon for some staff to be having relationships with junior interns. He also told me that corporate funds were used to fly in women across the United States to have sex at the recording studio at the request of artists and other employees. And he actually said that this money was not only coming from the company, but it was being recorded under travel. So that's how common it was. And he was sort of like, it was almost as easy as if, you were ordering food to the studio. That's how routine some of those requests had become. But he also talked about some of his own incidents, some of his own experiences. He told me about an incident back in about 1995 when he first started at the company. It was in his very first week in the job. He told me about walking in on his boss, Sean Combs, in the recording studio, having sex with a young woman who he described as being quiet, not really talkative. He said he opened the door, he thought the room was empty in this recording studio. He says that Sean Combs basically swore at him, told him to get out. But he was really struck looking back that the woman herself didn't respond or react in any way. And he says, knowing what he knows now about some of the allegations that have come to light, that incident has really played on his mind. Why didn't that woman react? Why wasn't she that talkative? Could she have been high on drugs? Was she just shy? He had a lot of questions around that. So those are three of the kind of the big things that he told us about. Corporate funds being used to fly in women for...
Wow, that's, dude. Only thing I'm saying, only thing Uncle Mike is saying, man, it's too many stories. It's too many of them for all of them to be 100% wrong. Too many people saying, I walked in on them and I did this, and Exhibit X is saying that Diddy done took him to a gay bar, and he was like, what? How we get here? Stuff like that. It's just too many stories that people say, yo, and big homie CC is saying, man, I've been trying to tell y'all this. I mean, I'm Big Sean Puffy Combs. Who gonna believe you? Ain't nobody gonna believe you. I do what I want.
For sex, this own incident, he had a lot of questions around that. So those are three of the kind of the big things that he told us about. Corporate funds being used to fly in women for sex, this own incident that he witnessed in the recording studio, as well as there being a broader hookup culture at the company, which a lot of staff told us about at the time.
I mean, it's very consistent with the criminal allegations that he's facing, essentially using his business empire and money to facilitate a criminal enterprise and a sex trafficking enterprise. So very consistent. Does he believe all of the allegations against Sean Combs?
So I think Daniel Evans, like many of the people that I've spoken with, especially those who knew Diddy back in the 90s, do find it really hard to reconcile what they've been hearing with the man that they knew. To put it into context, Diddy was only 23 when he started Bad Boy Records. This was a young label run by 20-somethings who, in their own words, everyone there wanted to have fun, party, hook up, and build good memories. So they've been finding it really hard to see how this 19, 20, 23-year-old they knew at the start of the company, this kind of bold, brash go-getter who was this upcoming rising star in the music industry, is now being hit with so many of these allegations. And Daniel in particular said to me that, he didn't want to believe this, but it wasn't until he saw that video of Cassie Ventura, Sean Combs' ex-partner of 10 years, who used to be at the label, that video on CNN of Sean Combs beating her at a hotel in LA, that he really sat there and thought, wow, has anything changed? And it reminded him, that incident with Cassie, of something that Daniel told me that he witnessed back in 1997, so, a decade before. There was an incident where he said that Sean Combs had received his biggest paycheck to date. It was $6 million, and they were all in the Bad Boy offices in New York City, having a meeting with colleagues, and Sean Combs got really, really annoyed. And he turned to one staff member and basically said, I have so much money now that I could hire someone to kill you and nobody would even know. Nobody would even ask questions. So they were all looking back saying there were some warning signs back in the 90s of how money and power was getting to his head.
Rihanna, I also understand, before I have to let you go, you spoke with a Jimmy Maines. Who's Jimmy Maines?
So Jimmy Maines is somebody who worked at Uptown Records with Sean Combs back in the early 90s. So before Sean Combs started Bad Boy Records, he got his start at Uptown, which was another hip-hop label at the time. And he was 19 when he got that job, and he rose to this really senior role as talent director. So that's where he got his start. And Jimmy was basically describing to me how Sean Combs had a bit of a temper. He used the language that Sean Combs acted like a bratty kid in the office. If he didn't get his way, he would bang his hands on the table. He would start yelling like this kind of immature, naive 19-year-old. And, Jimmy was thinking about some of those incidents. And, at the end of our interview, when I spoke with him, he sort of said to me something that many people have been saying. They've been questioning, did I know the real Sean Combs, a man who has constantly reinvented himself over the decades? And he said something really poignant. He said to me, you know what, Rihanna, people could think that Sean Combs is a monster. That's not the guy that I remember. And then he kind of paused and said, but maybe money gives you the freedom to be who you really are. And maybe he was that guy all along. So that's a question a lot of people who know Sean Combs have been grappling with. Do I know him? Did I know him? What does all of this mean now in light of what we've been hearing and all of these allegations?
Yeah, it's a very fair question. Rihanna, before I let you go, real quick, do you know if anybody you spoke to is going to be cooperating in the actual criminal case against Sean Combs? Have they given any indication about that?
Nobody's given me any indication about that yet. I mean, we just published this story yesterday. I'm still checking in with my sources, seeing how they're feeling and how they're doing. But, as far as I know, no one's been approached about anything yet.
Well, you're doing great reporting over there at the BBC, Diddy on Trial. I encourage everybody to take a look at it, and just always excellent reporting from Qiana Croxford. It was great seeing you, and thank you for coming back here on Sidebar.
Thanks for having me on.
And I just want to address a couple more things about Daniel Evans that was talked about in the podcast. So he managed Bad Boy's recording budgets and artist contracts between 1994 and 1997. So he not only had a front row seat to Combs' alleged antics and how they changed over the years, but when he's talking about how the studio became a party spot and how women would be flown in on Bad Boy's dime, when you think about that, these random women coming in, essentially he controlled the budgets. He told the BBC it was probably like thousands of dollars. I don't think it happened all that often, but it was definitely a recording expense. So Evans worked on things like the budgets, says Combs' own request to have certain women meet him somewhere was managed by his personal assistants, and one of those assistants told the BBC that Combs would ask them to fly in women that he was, quote, messing around with to put them up in hotels, but the assistants said they weren't sex workers. And that's important for the federal case because the big part of the federal case is commercial sex work, commercial sex workers, transporting people across state lines. Now, on top of the criminal case, Combs is facing dozens of civil lawsuits in both federal and state court. He and his attorneys are likely very, very, very busy. The claims of rape and abuse in those lawsuits, they come from men, they come from women, and they also come from people who say that they were just children when they were attacked. The lawsuits paint Combs as this intimidating man who used his power and influence to force himself on people, which, by the way, mirrors the federal indictment. In fact, just yesterday, here on Sidebar, we talked about a John Doe who says that he was this adult entertainment dancer back in 2007, performed for Combs in Las Vegas. And he says Combs promised him major opportunities in the music business, but really was essentially just treating him as a sex slave. His lawsuit reads, plaintiff was at all relevant times a Las Vegas-based entertainer who aspired to become a musician. Knowing that plaintiff desperately sought a breakthrough in the music industry, Combs enticed plaintiff with fraudulent promises of a career in the music industry. Combs used his false promises of career advancement as weapons, trapping plaintiff in a vortex of exploitation and fear. Combs did not follow through with these promises. Instead, Combs subjected plaintiff to a relentless pattern of drugging, sexual assaults, death threats, clandestine recording, blackmail, and psychological manipulation that far exceeded any bounds of consent or professionalism. And John Doe also calls out Bad Boy for its apparent involvement in enabling this alleged scheme. Quote, Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs' production company, facilitated Combs' calculated abuse and played a significant part in Combs' ruthless scheme to exploit plaintiff. Now, John Doe worked through an agency that used pseudonyms so he wouldn't know his client was Combs until he showed up. This happened on multiple occasions. He also says that he wouldn't have been able to tell in advance that he was going to what is essentially a Diddy party. The complaint reads, on these additional engagements through plaintiff's agencies, Combs offered plaintiff beverages, which plaintiff consumed. Combs also asked plaintiff to apply baby oil to plaintiff's skin during the performances, which plaintiff did. After applying the baby oil, plaintiff became unusually sleepy, disoriented, confused, exhausted, drowsy, weak, sluggish, numb, alarmed by the sensation of being trapped in his own body. Plaintiff felt a heavy sensation behind his eyes and felt that moving his body became more difficult and exhausting. And once Combs learned that John Doe had these lofty music goals, the alleged victim says he would use the promise of fame and money to convince John Doe to fly to wherever Combs was, ostensibly so Combs would listen to his music, but instead he says Combs forced him to perform sex acts under the threat of violence. And later on, according to the lawsuit, John Doe found out that Combs allegedly had secretly made sex tapes and that Combs had allegedly threatened to release them if John Doe didn't do what he wanted. The man claims this went on for years, that he wasn't comfortable coming out with his own story until the flood of lawsuits against Combs started in November of 2023 with the bombshell suit from his ex-girlfriend Cassandra Ventura. But we've heard similar stories from some of the women allegedly assaulted inside Bad Boy's recording studio out in New York in their own civil lawsuits against Combs. They say they've been dealing with trauma for years. They finally felt like they could address it publicly because they weren't alone. In fact, on May 21st of last year, we had model Crystal McKinney, who filed a lawsuit against Sean Combs, Bad Boy Entertainment Holdings, Sean John Clothing LLC, Universal Music Entertainment Group. In 1998, she claims when she was just 17 years old, she was flown to MTV's first model mission competition, got a modeling contract. In 2003, she was then invited to attend a men's fashion week event in New York, and she claims after going to dinner with a designer and Combs invited her to the studio. And her lawsuit says that when she got there, Combs was there with several men drinking, smoking marijuana. And she says that she took one hit of the marijuana, but thinks it was laced with something else. And she claims Combs took her into the bathroom and forced her to perform oral sex on him. And according to her lawsuit, the next thing she remembers, waking up in a taxi. Then we have a woman named April Lampros. She filed her own lawsuit just days later. And she claims she met Combs in 1994 when she was a college student studying fashion and marketing. And she says Combs wanted to impress her, invited her to the studio. Her filing actually includes a photo of Combs, seemingly with his arms around Lampros and another woman. And she claims that Combs assaulted her and that he filmed it, which she says she didn't find out about until years later. Her lawsuit states in or about 2023, Miss Lampros was at a function and a gentleman informed the man that Miss Lampros was dating that he should reconsider dating her because he personally saw a video of her and Sean Combs having sex. According to Ms. Lamprose, this redacted name, shared that he saw the tape during the summer of 1997. According to Mr. Lamprose, she was told that Mr. Combs apparently recorded them having sex without her knowing and showed it to people. Third woman, Talia Graves, sued Combs in September of last year, alleging that when she was 25 years old back in 2001, she was lured to Bad Boy's recording studio, where she believes she was drugged and viciously raped by Combs and his bodyguard, Joseph Sherman.
It goes beyond just physical harm caused by and during the assault. It's a pain that reaches into your very core of who you are and leaving emotional scars that may never fully heal. Some of the hardest parts of this pain are the shame and the guilt I have experienced that plays a negative part in my day-to-day ability to function properly. Being blamed, questioned, and threatened has often made me feel worthless, isolated, and sometimes responsible for what happened to me. My family issues made the pain even worse. I was already going through a divorce at the time of the assault and did not get the support that I needed. I was also faced with disbelief and judgment. This has put a strain on my selection of men and relationships. But many relationships became aggressive and abusive, which has made me feel even more alone in my struggles.
Now again, Combs has not been found liable.
Man, how can all these people, how can all of them be telling lies? How can all this not have a little bit of truth? 1% truth in all these people, man. So all I'm just pointing the finger at him saying that he recorded them, he drugged them, and then he, oh my God, come on, man. How can all of them be saying this? I cannot get that out of my mind.
And abusive, which has made me feel even more alone in my struggles.
Now again, Combs has not been found liable in any way in any of these lawsuits. He's not been found guilty of the charges he's facing. He settled the multi-million-dollar lawsuit with 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗞𝗦 Ventura one day after she filed her suit in 2023, but didn't admit to anything. And he is innocent until proven guilty in the court of criminal law as well. Now, as far as that criminal case, we're waiting an upcoming enterprise letter from prosecutors, which may lay out more details like dates, locations, participants as part of this overall racketeering charge. So we'll keep our eyes out for that one. But right now, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.
Dude, people like Ellen DeGeneres, they know. They know. Usher, he know. He know. Beaver knows. Now, he don't want to know, but he knows. People that's high up like Kevin Hart, Steve Harvey, they know, man. They freaking know. I know they know. Oprah, shit, Oprah knows everything, man. Allegedly, I gotta say allegedly. I don't want my channel taken down. I'm getting, Uncle Mike getting a little beside himself. How you gonna know so much and have this man on your show over and over again and all this stuff and do all this business with this person and you don't know what he undid? Shame on you, you know. Look here, man. Y'all let me know if y'all been an ender. That means y'all made it to the end of this video. Shout out to all my enders. Put in the comment that I am an ender. We got people that's checking out comments and everything, man. Maybe we should give a prize to somebody that's saying that they're an ender. Y'all take it light, take it slow. Tell them Uncle Mike told you so. Peace out.